let's do this. Let's talk about the mercies of God. From chapters 1 through 11, okay? Now, it's not, I'm not everybody's going to be able to read that, I understand, but this is up here for helpers. Mercies of God. What is something that you've learned from chapters 1 through 11? Now, if I were in your seat, I would not respond. Just know that, but I'm up here. So some of you are very outgoing and you're like, yeah, I got one. If you don't say anything, I don't think you're going to hell. Okay? Don't have this obligation to say something. Does anyone have something that they've learned from chapters 1 through 11? I will put a couple down. It kind of helps us, okay? So let's see. While we were weak, Christ still died. How about that one? Okay. Anybody else? Got one? Somebody? I have a list. You got another one? Okay. So, the gospel's for everyone. The whole part of Jew or Greek, it's like the gospel's for everyone. So, gospel for all. Okay, now somebody's got it. What do you got?
Peter still never got it.
Huh?
Peter still never got it.
Okay, we'll put that in a different category.
I like Peter.
Some don't ever get it. How about that? Somebody else?
No condemnation.
You didn't even need work. No condemnation. Anything else? Mercies of God, 1 through 11. I have a cheat sheet. Oh, this one is so good. Two more, and if you got something, please, we'll try to scribble it up here. This one, Jesus intercedes for us. That's so good, okay? So, Jesus on our side. I'm moving from capitals to singles here. The last one is this. Jesus, God shows no partiality. This one, nice. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Nothing can separate us.
Oh, so good. Yes. Nothing. Nothing. Can. Is it an E? It's an A with a dot on top. Anybody else? I don't want to take too much more time, but you got anything? Okay, so this is 1 through 11. There's so much more. This list can be very exhaustive. I want us to kind of have a visual aid for what comes next. Would you go in your phones or in the Bible? Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. Romans 12, 1 and 2. 1 through 11, here are some of the mercies of God. There's so many more. And if you had specifics in your life where you're talking about that, I had that wreck one time and God came in with the mercy of heaven, we can put through 1 through 11. I almost guarantee you, your specifics in your world, in your life, hinge on one of these mercies of God truths from 1 through 11. All right. 1 in verse 2, chapter 12. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, in view of God's mercies, to present yourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. And so, due to everything that we've seen, everything that we've witnessed from 1 through 11, Paul is bidding us come. Come and do what? The only response possible. And the only response possible is this. He says, This is the only option. Now, this is still possible. Some don't ever get it. But in some ways, that might actually be mercy too. But here it is. This is the one option you get, O Christian. Now, some of you, is it spelled wrong? Which one? Thank you. I didn't even fit it, doesn't matter. Okay, you're with me, right? Okay. This is the only option Paul says. And all the things you can do, if you read this, if you just read it, that's one thing. But if you study it out, if you go to the depths of it, when it comes out in the wash, this is the only option. This is it. When you view that when Christ still died for you, when you realize it's not just for the Jew, but now the Gentile can come in too, when you see those mercies, when you realize not everybody gets it, but here you have an opportunity, when you see that God shows no partiality, which actually is a great guideline in life, when you look at all that, this is the only thing that can come from it. Now, he gives some what a living sacrifice is. A living sacrifice comes out with holy and pleasing. A big churchy word would be sanctification. The idea that we're becoming unbent throughout the rest of our lives. We want to become holy and pleasing because we're a living sacrifice. Now, my brother said this. He said, now you've heard this from other people, but this is who I heard from. He said, the problem with the living sacrifice is the living sacrifice continues wanting to crawl off the altar. The problem with the living sacrifice, it keeps on wanting to get off the altar. And you know this to be true. When you became a Christian, some of you had friends who then said, why would you do that? You know, I heard of a preacher, pastor one time of this big mega church, and he got caught up in a scandal, right? I remember being in college, I had a professor who would quote this one, I'll say theologian, but just this big wig in the world. And so, in a sense, we became disciples of that big wig, because half the class was quotes from this big wig. And a lot of it was so good. Don't get me wrong, it was so good. When the guy dies, information comes out. The guy was caught up in, and there's more detail, but the basis is he's caught up in the massage parlors. And we're not just talking about the ones that massage your shoulders. What I'm saying is, people who we see who have been living sacrifices, it doesn't matter who you are, you still, as a living sacrifice, want to crawl off of this altar. So what is going to take, what's going to take for us to be able to look at the gospel in a certain light to help us stay on the altar? Now, this is just 101. Everything I'm going to say, because chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, there's 100 sermons in these two verses. So I encourage you to go listen, seek out. This is just 101 stuff. Okay, so this whole idea about living sacrifice, being holy and pleasing to God. How do we get to that level? And I believe the word is gratitude. Okay? Gratitude. Gratitude is what gets us. It's what gets us to a new perspective. Because verse 2 says this: don't be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may, through testing, you may be able to discern what God's will is, holy, pleasing, and perfect will. Gratitude. Gratitude is what gets us to that point. And the reason is because we have a problem. And the problem is sometimes as Christians, as living sacrifices, the reason why we crawl off the altar is because we think too highly of ourselves or we think too lowly of ourselves. So let me explain that and we're going to move on. The thinking too highly of ourselves, I've said this a few times, but it comes back to the works basis. Now, James tells us it's faith plus works. That because of your faith, you then work. And I would say, yeah, because of gratitude, because you've been the view of God's mercies. With the view of God's mercies, that's why you have gratitude, that's why you're a living sacrifice, and that's why you're becoming holy and pleasing and acceptable to the Father. Now, sometimes we think too highly of ourselves. Why? Because we go back to the flesh. We believe that if I stay away from, if I do X, Y, and Z, if I live up to this standard, then God will accept me. It's a dead end. But then there's also this one. We think, oh, my past and what I've done, no way could God take a wretch like me. We have to get rid of these. And the reason is, because when we take that mindset of how could God love him, he couldn't possibly, and I'm talking about for the Christian, the person who's like, I'm not so sure about this, let's deal with that stuff. But I'm talking about if you're a Christian, we need to level up. We need to get out of this. Because in view of God's mercies, how dare you slap Jesus in the face and say, you've sacrificed? For him, yeah, but because of what I've done, I think I need to crawl on that cross with you. Are you with me? It's a slap in God's face. So we need to eliminate these two, and we eliminate those two with gratitude. The reason why gratitude is because it comes from a posture that there's nothing that I could have done to get where I am without help. And it leads us back to focusing on the mercies of God. And so when we come with a heart of gratitude, we go back and we rehearse the mercies of God, 1 through 11, and then we come back to the whole idea of, I am now a living sacrifice, which is your spiritual act of worship. So up here, singing songs, sure, but it's so much more. It's in spirit and in truth. Don't have time for that. The second part, the problem that I have with this, is in the second part, and perhaps some of you are in this camp as well. It says this, no longer be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This right here, and this right here, those are the patterns of this world. Thinking too high of yourself, and also thinking seriously too low of yourself. Because both of them stem from a term called pride. Once again, not enough time. There has to be this renewal of mind. There has to be this mental transformation for us to stay on the altar. Sometimes the only thing in life that we are trying to do is stay on the altar. But I want us, and I hope to springboard us by the end of this, for us to get to a place where our goal is no longer just trying to stay on an altar and not crawl off, but for us to position ourselves on the altar in a sweet spot. So here's the next part that it rocks my socks in a rough way, okay? And it's this. What do I do with that? That is, because there's only like a couple of places in the Bible. I think it's 2 Thessalonians 4, Hebrews 6, I believe, and here in Romans 12, and there's other places, and you get to see God from different vantage points, Him working out His will. But His will, there's something about it. There's something about that it's good, pleasing, acceptable, and this last one, this is everything. In perfect will, okay? Good, pleasing, and perfect will. That one thought it was funny. God's will it's difficult for me still. I'm 31 years old. This part's still hard for me. Perhaps you're in the camp with me. And so I invite you into that camp, but I don't plan on staying long. And I hope you don't either. Some of you have been living life quite a bit, and not just life, but living Christian life. And you have received the key and have unlocked it in your life individually, that this is no longer scary for you. But perhaps you're like me, and you don't even really want to touch that. God's will. Let me put it this way. Some of us are, we're okay with God's will as long as it has to do with our own will. For instance, some of us have gone to certain places and been compelled, and I would say by the Holy Spirit, to sell all we possess and give to the poor. I think you understand what I'm saying? Some of us in here, you have, perhaps you've been missionaries in foreign fields, and you're like, I'm sold out for God. Some of you have thought about it, and just in that thinking of it, I think we're moving in probably some good directions. For some of us, we stay in our seat, and we don't really move. And the reason is because we say, God, what is your will for my life? And we're not asking, what does the Bible say in the broad sense of it? We're saying, no, what about the details? What about the specifics? Okay? Give me those. What we're doing is we're saying, God, if you just give me a PDF file, if you just give me a PDF file of every step, oh boy, will I ever, I'll live it out, doctor's orders to the T, and just give me the PDF. I had a professor in college, and he said, Micah, that's how he talks, Micah. He said, I never looked out to the baseball field at the college. I never looked out of the baseball field at the college and saw a burning bush. Any of you? Do you remember burning bush? Wow. Moses gets one and I don't. What's up with that? Have you ever been to that point? Like, seriously, God, if you just tell me what to do, I'll do it. I mean, seriously, I'll give you all my materials. I'll give you all my things. I will divorce my spouse, but man, I'll do anything. You see what I'm saying? Like, anything in your will, just give me specifics and I'll live it for you. Seriously, I'll do it. And for some reason, God keeps that file hidden from you. Find that frustrating? The problem is some of us don't just find it frustrating, it actually cripples us. And we never make a move. We never make a move. This whole God's will thing, it's good, pleasing, and perfect. But if God gave us in full HD His plan, all the details, the problem with that is God's will it crushes. It's just the truth of it. I'm thankful that I've never dabbled in Ouija boards. I thought about it. I'm glad I never have. And the reason is, I don't believe knowing the future, if in any way that that's possible, will ever benefit me. Because if I knew what the future had to hold, I would neglect a lot of things to make sure that happened or that didn't happen. Are you with me? I try to alter it. If God gave me a PDF file of all the details, here's the problem. It would crush me. It would crush you. And the reason is because of pride. You know what's great? The church is great until you put a person in it. They somehow find a way to screw everything up, don't they? I mean, family's great until you put a person in it. You somehow find a way. You understand what I'm saying? Humans, am I right? They are the worst. They are the worst. If you receive that file from God, it's all fine and dandy. But when you put yourself into it, guess what? You're going to screw it up. Why? Because you're human. The only one that was able to receive a PDF file and actually make it through was not you. So here's what happened. You get that plan, and you say, okay, I got this. You live it out, it probably wouldn't take long. Before, you'd be saying something like, what was I thinking? Why did I let that go? Where's this going to take me now? And so you'll find it crushing because you couldn't live up to the standard. And then what will happen is you'll look at God and you'll be like, how in the world could you let this happen? And you'll shake your fist at Him. Why? Because who do you think you are telling me the future? You knew I couldn't handle this. Why don't you? You understand what I'm saying? I had a friend, they had a kid. He was 12 years old. And the mom in the country let him drive home, and then they were parking the car. And then he parks in the driveway. But then he does that whole, I don't know, you find this in certain age groups in our society, but they don't know what the foot pedal is for the gas and brake. Are you with me? And the 12-year-old, he found not the brake, but and he slams into their other car. And the mom's thinking, why did you do that? And his response was, why would you let a 12-year-old drive? Are you totally flips it. I'm not kidding. When we look at ourselves as child to father, and we receive a PDF from God, that's what you'll get. Because you're human and you're going to screw it up. And when that happens, you're going to either blame yourself so low that God's riches can't pay for you, or you're going to lift yourself so high and say, what kind of God would let me? You see what I'm saying? God's will has tons of specifics, so much detail. But it's very scary for that file to land in a human's hands, especially my own. So, how do we stay on this living sacrifice altar and not continue to crawl off? And also be okay. Because it's one thing you hear a sermon and be like, all right, I'm okay, but we're all going to go to our places in our corners and we're going to be like, so God, what's your will for me? You know, where are you working here? Because I just don't understand why you allowed X, Y, and Z to happen when you're such a good God. And we're trying to please you, God, and be in love with your will. And it's perfect. And here it is. It seems like evil is just surrounding our camp. Are you with me? So what's your will? I believe we find it in changing our relationship. Now, I don't believe I'm here yet. Remember, I said I'm still in this circle. And some of you, I invited into it. So don't try to jump out yet. Some of you, though, you've gotten to this place. And it has freed you. Now, I'm not talking about freedom like salvation, because if you're with me in this camp, Jesus has us, the mercies of God. Some of you it's like you've unlocked the door and you've stepped right through. And that's where I hope that all of us will level up to. And this does not happen overnight. The word is, just put it here for fun. Friendship. Is that how you spell friendship? If I wrote in smaller letters, I would know how to spell. But I'm really trying to write in capitals to help everybody know what I'm writing, and then I forget how to spell. Doesn't matter, I'm showing you ignorance. Friendship's the key, though. Some of you, I've said that a lot, but it's true. Some of you have had children, and perhaps planning on having some more. And you have experienced what some of us have yet to experience or may never experience, and that's fine. But it's the whole parent-child relationship. And you've correlated that with God the Father and God the Son. And you're like, I knew the gospel, but once you held that little one for the first, that whole thing, it's like it exploded. From what I've heard, it just exploded. Some of you find that true? That you just have a deeper connection? Okay, great, you're with me. The Bible gives us relationships to help us navigate in life. But I don't think the father-son relationship for us to God is the highest one. I believe it's friendship. I definitely don't believe that shepherd sheep is also the highest. Or no, I believe it's friendship. I don't believe that the even the spouse one is. Now, Revelation at the end, yes, it talks about this great wedding feast. Yes, 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 yes. And the groom, Christ, and his bride is not you. If you think that you are married to Jesus, you are wrong. And if some of you are single because you're like, I'm just married to Jesus, please quit saying that. Because you are wrong. You are not married to Jesus. The church is the bride. You're a part of that church, yes. But it's not an individualistic marriage. Are you hearing me? But there is something that he invites us to that I believe is greater for the individual. Each individual. And that's friendship. The night before Jesus was to be betrayed, they were celebrating Passover. And they had been doing that for years and years and years. But this time, Jesus institutes something called, we call it the Lord's Supper. I doubt that he went, now it's called the Lord's Supper. No. But he gave us the bread, the juice and the cup, that represents grace. In the midst of all of that, at some point, Jesus says, looky here, fellas. No longer do I call you servants. Because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. But tonight I call you friends. A friend knows what his friend is doing. That changes everything. The reason why it changes everything is because Jesus, I don't like to use the word invite, but that's the best word I got for it right now. Jesus invites us to a friendship with God. There was one person that said, from what I remember in the Bible, it's called that Noah was counted as a friend of God. That's not me. Yet. For some of us in here, we're still in that camp. For some of you, perhaps you've gained that. Let me tell you about friendship. And this is a whole other sermon later on, but just a little bit. Friendship is this. Friendship knows how the other person works. Friendship knows how the other person talks. Friendship between two people understand what they say and what they don't say. And so whenever that person hears what their friend said through a third party, they can filter and go, that doesn't sound like Roger. Roger doesn't say that. Or, yeah, that sounds like Roger. And Roger would say something like that. Are you with me? Are you with me? Friends, what they do. In the high moments, there's joyful embrace, festive. They are there, doing life together. But also, friends, when life turns the other way, and baby doesn't survive, those two friends are cheek to cheek, beard to beard, as tears roll down both faces. You understand what I'm saying? Friendship is that level up. To say that we can have a friendship with God, that's pretty lofty. But Jesus said this, no greater love is there than a man lay down his life for his friends. What's this mean? That means you with your kids, you go to work. Why? Because it's your obligation, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to feed them. Yeah, it is. You gave up your body to have a child. Yeah, you did. You give your body to make money to feed. Yes, you did. Or how about a spouse, face to face? You made a covenant, a commitment. You signed on a dotted line, left or right. You jumped into that with friends. It's voluntary. You never signed. There's a common goal, a common purpose. There's a mission. There's a I see what you see. Let's go. It's shoulder to shoulder. You seeing this? And so why does Jesus say there's no greater love than a man laying down his life for his friends? Because you do it because there's no obligation. You do it because you'd rather do nothing else. This is all too quick. But when a person gets to that sort of level, here's what happens. When you're on this living sacrifice altar and you're watching God's will take place, you're not, and you're praying to Him, you're no longer caught up on the details. You're so tight-knit to God that you don't, You're not concerned about his methods anymore. You've gone beyond the whole God works in mysterious ways. You're like, yeah, he does. I just can't wait to see how he does it this time. You're no longer concerned with the details. Why? Because you trust your friend so much. Why? Because that friend never gave up on you. The problem is some of us have had friends who gave up on us, or we gave up on our friends. But Jesus says, hey, I'm the ultimate friend. And I proved it for you. So here's my will. And what's my will? To do what my Father wants me to do. And what's that? To give his life for his friends. And so what did he do? He did that. For you and me, to understand God's will, we can get to the point where the details don't matter to us anymore. His methods of how he does it, the means, the material, we say take whatever material you want. Why? Because I don't care about how you do it anymore. I just want to have the good vantage point of watching the master work his craft. And at any time that he says, Micah, get up here and hold the flashlight, I was hoping he would ask,